there's always the question, can I do it? And we pray before every race because that's just who I am. And God's and I tell people anything that's good, anything I can do, God's put it there, and the potential that's in all of us, God's put it there. So it's kind of almost like testing, let's see what you put in there, God, let's see what's left in the tank and what we can dig up and I call it mining the potential God's put in me or in anyone.
And huge welcome to the Ultra Running Guys. You've got Jeremy Reynolds and Jeff Winchester of the Ultra Running Guys. Tonight's guest is becoming quickly a good friend of ours. Not only is this guy an incredible runner, and we will talk about that. Just some quick numbers. Ran his first 100-mile back in 2013, and since then has run 15 races of 100 miles or more, maybe 16 now after last weekend, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
But also a dedicated family man, just very active. And you may, as soon as we introduce this guy, recognize his voice because he's also the host of the Run The Riot Podcast, which a lot of you may be familiar with. And so with that, Dave Theriot, man, welcome to the show.
Hey man, thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to visiting again, man.
Yeah, for everybody listening, as we're talking now, Dave actually just had us on not too long ago and released an episode, which was so fun just to hang out and chat. So it's fun to kind of, return the favor and instead of you asking the questions.
It was weird to be guest.
Yeah, it was weird.
You guys did great. I could tell there was some hesitation every now and then, but y'all did a good job.
Well, man. We don't want to offend other people or each other, so it's important to kind of be able to be diplomatic in our answers because we still want to be friends.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
Well, look, man, we were really excited to talk to you. And honestly, as we were going through, we talked before this, we've just got a ton of stuff we want to dive into. And really kind of when we thought about bringing you on the first time, what came to mind, of course, is you are preparing to get ready for the Triple Crown of 200s. So we definitely want to talk about that. We also want to talk your podcast. But before we dive in, you just had a big weekend, man, a really big weekend. I guess, almost 2 weeks ago now, a week and a half ago, yep. The LOVit 100. And not only did you run it, but you took second place. So we'd love to hear kind of all about that day.
Well, it was a tough race. I'll just be honest. And it was number 15. That was number 15, and okay. It was tough. The bottom of the shirt says "ankles of steel and an iron will," and man, rocks and a lot of steep inclines, and so I was concerned. I turned my ankle twice, pretty good during training. And so, man, I was really concerned about my ankle. And I was telling people people said, you got to race this weekend, go pray for you. I said, pray for my ankles, so it's like, and you know what? My ankles they didn't turn them once the whole race, but great race. It was a Friday 5:00 start, which is, it's weird. We traveled on the Friday, and so I tried to sleep. My wife drove, and she was gonna be crewing me, so she was up all night too. But I tried to rest, and so you just go into that first night having pretty much been up most of the day, and so that was really tough. For about 4:00 in the morning, I was getting pretty loopy on the trails. I was falling asleep while I was running, and normally when you go into the night, when you start in the morning, you kind of like you're tasting the finish. You kind of and I didn't have that. We still had a good ways to go. So that was tough. I probably would have done some things differently. Probably would have.
So an aside, because I do know a little bit about this race. I was following you along with just a group that you and I are part of. You had a little bit of a tangent, I believe.
Oh yeah. So 100 miles is not enough.
Nope.
So at the beginning, probably about 9 miles in, running, and there's a Arkansas runner, Brad Taylor, and I knew about him because I was scouting out the competition, and him and I were running together, getting to know each other. Good guy, strong runner, and we're just talking and we're going, and we're going on this gravel road, and then there was a single track, and they had a few flags hanging, but there wasn't like a sign with an arrow. We should have noticed it, but a sign would have been nice. But we just kept going. We're visiting, we're talking, and we get to this road, and there's cars going. There's no flags, and we recognized it because there was some construction. Like, we drove this on the way in, and so luckily, here's a little tip for everybody. I loaded the GPX on my phone in the Gaia app. And so I pulled my phone out, and the trail was here, and we were not on it, And so, and I couldn't tell how far we were off. I was like, dude, we are off trail. So we started running back, and there were two other guys that did the same thing, probably following us. And so we got a mile or two off trail, and then found our mistake. And man, that'll early in a race, I had to mentally just get inside, just, okay, it happened. I can't freak out, because the tendency is like just to start sprinting. I got to catch up, because we were kind of toward the front, and I didn't. I just kind of held back, and Brad kind of took off, and I just took my time and ended up kind of picking off those runners, picking off the ones that had gotten ahead of me, because I was a doofus, and so so that really. I was kind of, I was pleased that I was able to just kind of calm myself down and just stick with the plan, Yeah, I don't know if that showed on the, that you could tell that I wasn't going crazy, but.
No, you did good. You were even paced pretty much the entire way. So did Brad end up winning it? Who was he, the first place person?
So Brad, and I'll say this, cause he shared it on Facebook, but he ended up having to drop at mile 34. He even said he should have calmed down. He panicked a bit, and he took off. And I mean, he's a good runner. He ended up in first place for a while, and then was going on a downhill and pulled a groin muscle and had to drop. And he said, he realized he went out too fast. He should have just kind of sat back. So, I hate to hear that, I hate to hear when anybody has to drop for any reason. And, so I just, did what I had to do and didn't freak out too bad.
You definitely had a great race, though. Like I said, you were evenly paced the entire time. And it's an incredible story. And just to be fair, we're going to spend the entire time talking about something we think is even a little bit more incredible, just is the things you're training for, and that's the Triple Crown. But I have to ask, did you look at the LOVit 100 as a race, or was it a training run in preparation for this fall?
Well, I've been wanting to do the LOVit 100. Heard so much about it. So many people that I know had run it. It's got a great reputation. The buckle is fine. Have you seen that buckle? I think it's beautiful, man. It's nice. It's got the topo map behind it and all. It's amazing. Anyway, so I just wanted to do it. I heard it was tough. Wanted a challenge, and so Cliff's coaching me, and Cliff Pittman, and so I told him I wanted to put that on the calendar, and I said, look, we can do it as a training race. With anything leading up to the Triple Crown, it can be a training race or whatever. The Triple Crown's my A, but he said, no, it's far enough ahead of time. It was an A race, and I trained for it like it was an A race. I actually put more miles in for LOVit than I did when I did the Tahoe 200 in 2018, training miles. And so I put a lot of miles in, and, I felt like I executed pretty good. There's some few things that I probably could have, worked on a little bit more. I got toward the end, I was having some trouble on some of the inclines, just 80 miles in, and you going up a 23 degree, anyway, I was talking to my legs like, come on, let's go, trying to power hike and get up. And, but I'd like to work on that a little bit. And in nutrition, I always feel like I can do a little bit better on nutrition. It's hard though, when you get to that deep in and your stomach's just, not being your friend. Yeah,
it's rebelling.
Yeah, well, so I'll say it's interesting. You mentioned Cliff, and so the nighttime start probably gave a unique opportunity, because as you mentioned, the type of runner you are for 100 miler, you're probably typically used to finishing in the dark. But as luck had it, so Cliff actually went out, he posted about it, and he was doing some pacing with you and got some video and pictures. And one of the things I thought was really interesting, and I've heard you talk about just how you like to smile and kind of stay positive. And Cliff said, look, man, I ran with this guy for miles and miles, and only found out afterwards that he was really spending some time in the pain cave and doing some struggling, and he didn't even recognize it, and he was with you. How do you manage kind of, and we'll probably get into some deep mindset later, but how did you manage that? How did you kind of keep your head straight moving forward?
It's tempting to focus on the negative when I mean, you guys know when you're hurting. And I remember Cliff asking me to, you're doing a check-in. How's your body? How's everything going? And and I had an issue in my front of my right ankle calf area was hurting, I guess, from the downhills. But I just said, yeah, I got something going on here. It's hurting, but it's not getting any worse. I'm probably going to limp around for a few days after, and I just acknowledged it. And then we kept going. And I limped around a couple of days after from that. And then it was fine, afterwards. But I think it's just trying not to dwell on those things. And when I would get kind of in that dark place, I would try to, number one, get myself to think of positive, that I get to be out here. Thankful. I thank God that I get to be there and this far into the race, and that I hadn't turned my ankle yet or at all, or wasn't going to, or anything. And then just get calories in. Cause I noticed a lot of times when I hit that low, it's cause my calories were, you get to plugging along and just not taking it in like you should. And so, and having Cliff there is great. I normally run without a pacer, but then having somebody there telling you, good job on that climb. And I don't think of myself as somebody that needs that, cause I do it myself, but it affected me, having him say, oh, that's a good push right there, and I was like, yeah, that was a good push. It's like, it helped with the mental aspect of it. And, I wondered a lot of times what he was thinking, like, especially when it was pouring down 40 something degrees and raining, like he's probably thinking, man, he should have finished quicker so we wasn't in this jump, stuff like that. But anyway, it's just taking control of the mind and from experience, knowing that low is temporary. It's not, I'm not going to stay like this. And so just the fact knowing that I can come out of it mentally helps me to just endure and keep moving forward.
One thing you said that's really interesting there that I just thought that I don't normally kind of take stock of is the question about nutrition when I'm in a low. And it totally makes sense, but I've always kind of separated mindset and then the systems check. So I'm going to remember that. Just, hey, next time I'm really struggling, let's do a systems check first and make sure that I'm not digging myself into a hole. And then, there may be some mental stuff as well, but that's a great tip.
The system needs fuel.
Yeah, system does need fuel.
Just needs fuel. Yeah, if you're not fueling it, it's gonna have a lull, and that does affect us mentally. We're physical and emotional, spiritual, all that. So they all kind of connect.
Yeah, that's good. 200s.
Yeah.
You just ready to jump right in?
I mean, I could talk to you about 100 all day, but I'd rather hear about the 200s. I'm a little selfish like that.
Yeah. So I think probably what we'll do is have you kind of introduce what the Triple Crown is. Okay. We know you've done some of these before, and then we'll get into some specifics of your experiences to this point. But for anybody who may not know, why don't you get us familiar real quick with what the Triple Crown of 200s is?
All right. The Triple Crown of 200s, it's 3 200-mile races. They're each a month apart. The first one is the Bigfoot 200. It's up in Washington. It starts near the blast zone for Mount St. Helen. You get to run through it. You get to see Mount Rainier, and it's just beautiful, really rugged. That's in August. And then in September is the Tahoe 200. And that's around Lake Tahoe. And that's one that I've done before. The 5th year they had it, we did it the opposite route as from normal. And anyway, beautiful, also mountainous and pretty tough. And then the Moab 240, my nemesis, is the next month in October in Moab, Utah, and it's 240 miles through the stinking desert. And then I didn't make it to the LaSalle Mountains when I attempted it this last year, but you go up in the LaSalle Mountains, so you get desert, you get mountains, you get hot during the day, exposed heat, you get freezing cold temperatures at night. And so it's a challenge. And that's the Triple Crown of 200s. And so ever since I did the Tahoe 200 in 2018, and I have not been able to get the triple out of my head. It's been ever since I did that 200, I was like, I've got to do the Triple Crown. And I even prayed about it. God, if this is just me being stupid, you got to get this out of my head. And the next day I had somebody message me. Then I said, are you gonna have to show me that I need to do this because it's such a commitment? And the next day I had a message popped up, and they were basically paying my entry fees for all 3 races.
Oh my God.
And I was just like,
it doesn't get clearer than that.
Yeah, I was like, I called my wife. I was like, I'm doing the Triple Crown. It's like, so anyway, yeah. And so it's something that's it's in here. It's in the heart, man. It's I've been just passionate about trying it, and I think because it's just so hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just a quick overview. I mean, like the first 2 of them are over 40,000 feet of elevation for each of them.
Yeah,
that's a lot of elevation. Not to kind of freak you out, but that's a lot.
Well, one of them he's done, right? One of them.
The first one, yeah, he did Tahoe. Or the second one.
So I did Tahoe when I did Tahoe in 2018. A month later, I did Arkansas Traveler, and that wasn't as a dress rehearsal for anything, but I did it because I needed a states qualifier, and that was the only one I could fit in. And so, and that was tough doing a 200, and then a month later doing a 100. Like when I got to mile 60, I felt that deep, just that deep soreness came back, and my parents were crewing me, and I remember looking at my mom, and I just said, I am not having fun. And I finished it, and I'm glad I did, because that was my ticket that got me in the States.
Wow.
And so, I'm glad I was able to grind it out. But so I think, going into this, one of the big things that we're going to have to deal with, and Cliff's, going to help me is the recovery between all 3 of them. That's going to be so important between each one.
Yeah, and that's a question that we have. So we definitely want to get into some specifics, okay. Kind of about the Triple Crown. And, it's interesting when we asked you completely separate kind of before, we said, hey, what's kind of your most memorable, running experience? And then what's been your deepest low? And they were both, connected to these 200-mile races. And so we want to get into that, but I do want to ask, because I mean, our audience, tends to be newer ultra runners, people thinking about getting into ultra running. And so we're sitting here casually talking about 200 milers, right? But if we take a big step back,
even further.
So like we said, you've been running 100, mile distances since 2013. You've clearly got the experience behind you, but I think some people would ask, so what drives somebody to look at a 200-mile distance and say, that's where it's at for me? Like, that's next. How did you wrap your head around a 200-mile distance?
I think having, so I guess in my running and racing, I've done things always a little differently. My first race ever was a marathon. My first ultra was a 100-miler. And then I went back and did some others, but I put a lot of training into it. And I love the challenge. I love the process of laying out a training plan and doing it, and having that goal that's ahead, and just kind of grinding it out every day, like having that thing to look forward to. And that's that carrot in front of me. And so, I did some hundreds, did the Rouge Orleans as a 126.2 was my second one, and did some others. And like, I get them done. And I don't know. I've always felt like, even though you're racing faster, I felt like I could do more. And I don't want to sound, I don't know. I just felt that there was more that I could do, And so when the 200 started popping up, first thing I said was, wow, I can't afford that. That's crazy expensive. And then, as things changed, and I was able to realize I can do this. I can sign up for the Tahoe 200. And I just loved the whole process. And it was just that carrot, something more, something beyond. And I wanted to experience what that was like. And it is, 100 is, you guys know, it's an experience. And then the 200 is kind of like a whole, it's just different. The whole way you go into it, the way you pace yourself, the way you run it, the way you fuel, it's different. And so it's just I enjoyed the different process and trying to figure it out. You looking at the Tahoe 200, you look at the aid stations, they're 17, 20 miles apart, and you're trying to figure out drop bags and what you're going to need, and have no stinking idea what time of day it's going to be when you get through the first 100, because you're going up and down mountains, and you just don't know, that it's such a huge swing in how fast you'll be and everything. So it's just, a lot of the unknown. I don't know. That's part of it too. Just, all right, let's try to figure this out now.
So the aid stations were, you said, like 17 miles apart.
Yeah.
I think that's a wake up call for a lot of people. I mean, it really is. I mean, I appreciate you saying, we've run hundreds and all that kind of stuff and 50 miles and things, but I feel like I've run a 5K compared to what you're talking about here. No, really. And so, because it's quite impressive. Like one of the things I look at for any of the distances I've done, I will look at the aid stations and how far apart they're. And if it's a 5 mile or 7 mile or 8 mile, it changes everything just from a 5 to a 10 mile distance. I can't imagine looking at a 17 mile gap between them. And then, like you said, not knowing what time of day it's going to be and what's the estimated time it will take me to get up that if the elevation is another 5,000 feet.
But one thing I will say is the thing that I think is cool here is that the process of walking through that is very similar from going from a 50K to going, hey, maybe not so much a 50 mile, but if you're looking at 50K to 100, it's a whole different animal. And I would imagine it's the same thing. So even though the variables are different,
it's the same kind of research.
It's the same kind of, hey, how am I going to change what I've been doing and solve these problems and do things differently? And a lot of times we figure out by experience.
Sometimes it goes well, like the Tahoe 200 did.
Like the Tahoe, and sometimes it doesn't, like the Moab. So speaking of,
let's hear about the bad one.
Okay. So
do we want to jump so far? I mean, he did have a great experience at Tahoe 200.
That's what I was going to say.
We don't want to just dwell on the bad experience, right?
Let's just camp out a little while on the good one. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So like I said, we asked kind of what's your most memorable experience, and the Tahoe 200 is 2018. I'm assuming that was your first attempt at a 200-mile race.
Yeah.
So man, walk us through that. And I just want to hear, why that's so memorable, what it felt like.
Yeah, it was, so it was my first time to like Tahoe to begin with. So we got there a little bit before, and, you got to check in, and just the area is beautiful. The lake's beautiful, just being there. And then you're lining up at the start, and you got Courtney DeWalters right there. And I was like in front of her for I don't know, 10 feet or something, she's a beast. She's, just the excitement, it's like a 9 o'clock start, so you kind of taking your time and piddling and doing things, because you're going to be out there for 73 and a half hours or whatever. And so you get out there, and it's just the weather's was beautiful. I'm climbing mountains, I'm looking down, scenery everywhere. And then I'm meeting all these people. I swear I met Walter Handloser, Mr. runs 100 miles every weekend. Visited with him and got to know different people. I had reached out to Sean Nakamura, who's done a bunch of 200s. I reached out to him ahead of time, asking him questions about the race. And he was, like our ultra community, is just awesome. He didn't know me, and he gave me some information and helped me out with prepping for it. So I ended up running with him a little while, and he's like, hey, make sure you take care of your feet, And so it's like, I'm meeting these people, I'm running this great race. And then, as you go, man, I mean, like anything, it starts to set in, the newness wears off, and you're running, and you got to start digging deep. But there, even when it got dark and it got cold, and you're on top of a mountain at Tahoe, and you look up, there's hardly any light pollution. The stars, amazing. I've only one time seen stars, that many stars, and that was in the bush in Africa, literally. And I took moments. I gave myself, I said, every 10 miles, I'm going to stop, not necessarily stop, but mentally, I'm going to pause, and I'm going to thank God that I can be there. I'm going to thank God for this experience. And I did it. And every now and then I'd like kick a rock or something. And and then I realized that it was like 11 miles. And I was like, oh, sorry, God, thank you thank you for the rock to remind me that I'm, and so I just embracing it. And I had some pretty low lows. I was on top of the mountain one time at night, falling asleep into that second night. And because I didn't plan my sleep well, that's something I learned. Plan your sleep, or it'll plan itself for you. And it was too cold to lay down and sleep, because I was still wearing shorts, the drop bag situation, because you don't know where you're going to be able to get your warm clothes. And I was in a bind, and luckily I took some caffeine. I had some caffeine pills with me that kind of perked me up. But I came out of it and continued on. I think I ate a cheeseburger at every aid station. The aid stations are pretty awesome. The 200s, you can get burger, and all kind of really good food. But that was part of my nutrition plan. Just chow down at the aid stations, and it's okay to spend a half an hour at an aid station for a 200 because you kind of need to,
Right.
to refuel, and unless you're Courtney or any of those guys. But so I just embraced it, and all my race, the hundreds before, I get a little emotional and stuff at the finish, but it's more of a like, and got it done. And for this one, man, I remember hearing the crowd and the way you're coming down a ski slope, and I could hear it before I saw it. And when I heard it, man, my throat started lumping and my tears, I was like, oh, just hold on, man, not yet. And when I crossed the finish line, man, I cried. I was just raw, I was tired but I did it, and that's why we do what we do, that you hit the highs, you hit the lows, and man, I had to dig deep, and I was raw emotionally. But man, it was just so, when I did it, when I crossed the finish line, man, I did it, and I live in flatlands, and I went and I did it in the mountains, and I held my own, and I did pretty good, for being a guy who's not used to mountains and at elevation and all that. So it was cool. I can put myself in that place and live it again and again,
I wish I could have been there to see it. There's not a recording of you finishing, is there?
There is. My wife recorded me. I ran through the finish line. I was tired, but I ran all the way down that slope and I ran through it. And Candace even said something like, "Hey, you really ran through that finish line." I was like, I'm not going to walk through the finish line. I'm going to run through victorious. Yeah.
You want to see him crying?
What's that?
You want to see him crying?
I want to see that emotional finish.
Yeah,
for sure.
I know. Yeah.
There's a picture, and I was like, I didn't realize they were taking them. And there's a picture, and you can, I know exactly what I was feeling at that moment,
awesome.
And you can see it. I'll send it to you guys.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
It's memorable, man. It's there.
Huge.
One, before we kind of get into the dark side, the next experience, there's two things I want to touch on, and because you talk about it a lot in your podcast, and so you're very open about your faith. You're a guy of faith, and you mentioned it there. In fact, when we were on your podcast, that's Jeff and I met in the small group, and there was a connection there. I'm interested in hearing how that plays into you. I mean, you talked about it a little bit. It sounds like you're mindful of it. And then two, kind of the message that you like to talk about is really that we can do hard things, and that God created us with all this potential. Yes. In that race, I would assume that really hit home for you. Did that play a role? How does that go into the big races that you do? I'm interested in that aspect before we move on.
Yeah, definitely 100%, because, there's always the question, can I do it? And I pray, we pray before every race, because that's just who I am. And, and God's anything and I tell people, anything that's good, anything I can do, God's put it there, and so, and the potential that's in all of us, God's put it there. So it's kind of almost like testing, let's see what you put in there, God, let's see what's left in the tank, and what we can dig up, and I call it mining the potential God's put in me, or in anyone, and figuring it out. And so that's kind of like, that was part of that crossing the finish line was like, all right, it was there, and just thankful to be able to do it. And that's, gratitude. That's one of the reasons I thank God every 10 miles is gratitude's important to me. And I'm, might not be able to run like this forever. Jeff, I mean, injuries happen, and so, just being thankful that while we can do it while we can, and just enjoying it, and I love encouraging other people. Don't say you can't, try, just put the work in and see what's there.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's it comes out at you. Like, it's a definite expression of how you process things and how you move through your difficult moments and everything. So just think it's real, and you obviously have a very authentic faith. And so appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, man. Got to.
All right. So we talked about the high, the Tahoe, but we also know that, so last year, for anybody listening, last year, your plan was to do the Triple Crown. Obviously COVID had, other plans, but you still did take a stab at the Moab 240. And, for anybody who wants to hear the expanded story, you did a very cool race debrief on your podcast. So people can go find that on Run the Riot.
Yep.
But talk us through, man, because I know it was a rough day and very unexpected. And I think it had something to do with those aid stations you were talking about. So let's hear that story.
Man, so I was excited for it, really cool. I'm getting this, in the year of COVID, I'm getting to do a race and, pretty excited. And I made some decisions beforehand that kind of derailed it. But anyway, so it's cool. I'm at the starting line next to David Goggins. I'm running with Goggins for 4 miles, and people were pulling up on the side of him in their car going, "Hey man, I respect you." And they're not talking to me. They're talking to, and it was pretty neat. And then he took off. Anyway, I went into the race. I was excited. The first little bit went great. I saw Jen at the first aid station. It was good. So the electrolyte mix that they were giving away, they're going to be providing. I'd never heard of it. They were offering to run as a discount on the electrolyte mix. So I got it and I tried it. And my training was mostly when I tried it was in a cooler weather, and Moab is not cool weather. And so, for Tahoe 200, I used Tailwind, and they provided Tailwind. It made it easy. Get to the aid stations. You got everything you need right there. They refill you with Tailwind. So I wanted to use this stuff. And so I gave it a shot and it worked well. In the heat, my stomach did not do well with it. And so I got, it was hot. Everybody was suffering. And we got to this one area where there was 4 miles out and there was a water station, and then 19 miles to the next aid station. So it was pretty big jump. So I filled my water bladder full of this electrolyte mix and drank just water to get to the water stop. Filled that up, and then I got about a mile from that water stop, took a sip of that electrolyte mix, and just turned into a scene from The Exorcist, started projectile vomiting everywhere. And so looking back, man, you learn from what I should have done is going back to that water stop, dumped out all the electrolyte mix and just poured water in there. That way I'd had water, but I kept moving. I thought, I don't know. Thought I could just keep going. I said, I'll just sip it. So I'd sip it, and it stay down. I'd sip it and it stay down, and then throw up again. And so it was bad. And so I just had one little water bottle, one little soft flask full of water, and 19 miles. And so it got pretty. I kept trying to sip on the stuff and I'd keep it down a little while, and then I'd throw up. And it was hot, and then it got dark. And man, I was death marching. It was pretty bad. This one guy stopped and he said, "Man, you're okay?" And I was like, "Look, man, wait, let me show you this. I keep this above as a reminder. That's my Moab bib." I said, "You tell them at the next aid station," I think I had 8 miles to go. I said, if runner number 38 quits moving, send somebody to get me." Like I was in bad shape. And so he was able to stomach the electrolyte mix. So I gave him some of my electrolyte mix, and he gave me some of his water, probably another 10 ounces. So I think, man, if it wouldn't have been for that, I'd have been in really bad trouble. So I was able to make it to the next aid station. I sat there for a while, tried to regroup, got some broth down. About a mile out of that when I threw up again, and then made it to at mile 73, I think, where my wife was. And when she saw me, and of course I was on pace when first time she saw me, pace was great and not so much there. And she knew something was wrong, and we tried to troubleshoot. We tried different foods, and I couldn't keep anything down. Yeah, there's a picture of that too, of me just looking terrible. And we had to pull the plug. And so I shed some tears on that one. I was pretty raw, and knew people were following me, and I knew the sacrifices I made to be there, and to have to withdraw was tough. And but I would not make the same mistake again. I would definitely not make that mistake again. So
I'm confident that this year you'll take the lessons learned and put them forward. One thing that I picked up on, because a lot of people may not know, so you mentioned, hey, if 38 stops moving, you know, for people that don't realize the 200-mile events, they've got these trackers, right? That you're carrying. And so they're literally watching for these people to stop potentially for hours, because some people may sleep.
Yeah.
But that's really just how big of a run this is. It's somebody on the course. They're just watching a tracker going, this guy hasn't moved for 6 hours. Let's go check it out.
Yeah, they've got a guy who that's what he does. He sits there and watches the tracker. And in fact, the year before when David Goggins ran and he was off course, you know, they had to go get him, but they were, you know, that's how they knew they were tracking him. And so yeah, it was pretty scary. It was scary.
Well, man, I'm like I said, I got a chance to listen to it. I enjoyed hearing all the details of it. I know it was gut wrenching, but I mean, you're going to take a big swing at it coming up this year. Clearly you're running well. So let's talk about, you started to get into it, some of the differences. Let's talk about the differences between like 100 and a 200. I'm interested in hearing how you manage your sleep. What are you doing different for nutrition? Those kind of items.
Yeah. So for the 200s, like I said, for the Tahoe 200, I got in a bind and I had to make myself sleep. Well, now I'm going to proactively sleep. One of the guys, I've had him on the podcast, his name's Taylor Spike. He placed third when I ran the Tahoe 200. And one of the things I noticed, we're at like mile 50 and he was taking a nap. And so I asked him about that on the podcast. I was like, "Why, you were taking a nap early?" And he said, yeah. He said, you know, I would earn, he said, if I'm at this point at 50 miles, if I'm ahead of this, I have earned a rest. And so he was like an hour ahead of where he needed to be. And so he took a nap. And so my intention is when I go into these, into the 200s, is to plan at about an hour's rest, even that first night, even though I know I can run through it. When I get to that sleep station, I'm going to make myself lay down. I'm going to eat and I'm going to lay down and I'm going to rest. And, because I wasted a lot of time, just falling asleep while I was, you know, just crazy on the trail. I wasted a whole lot of time that if I'd have rested ahead of time, I'd have made it up, no doubt.
So for our listeners, right, that typically, I don't know many of the people that do hang out with us that have run a 200 miler other than yourself, right? Can you explain what a sleep station is? Because that's not a typical thing you find at a 50K or 50 mile or even 100 miler.
Yeah. So on the 200 miles, I'll have 3, 4, I think maybe even 5 on some of them sleep stations. And what they are is just a tent. And sometimes they'll have a cot or just blankets or something. And they're just a place you can go in and sleep for a little while, you know, and then get back out and some people spend a lot of time at some of these stations, or even if you're having a huge low, you know, in a 100 mile, you hit a low and you kind of know, okay, this is a little low. I've seen people who were so down. I didn't think they were going to finish. They look like death and they were sleeping when I got into the aid station. I took a short nap and they were sleeping when I got out, and they were just, and one of them even beat me, like, you know, just the regrouping is nuts, you know, that somebody can just come back from that because you have so much time, you know, 110 hours or 114 hours, depending on the race. And so, yeah, I mean, it's an important part of it. And some people can go like Courtney and others who without sleeping, or Goggins, they take a micro nap or whatever that is, sleep for a minute, whatever. But you know, I know, you know, I'll need to sleep. And so, you know,
so how long will you typically sleep?
That was my question too.
Yeah. So for Tahoe, I ended up taking even some trail naps during the day. I would just find me a spot, put my pack under my head and lay back for about 10 minutes at a time, just to get to be able to get to the next aid station and try to sleep comfortably. So I slept a total of about 3.5 hours for Tahoe. That was with a few trail naps, and then the sleep stations. I slept an hour at one, and then an hour at another, and then maybe a half an hour at one. So, yeah. It's not uncommon to see people sleeping on the side of the trail at a 200.
I'm sure.
I'm laughing only because I took a trail nap too in the Yeti 100, only because my stomach was dying and I laid on the middle of the trail.
Nice.
I DNF'd this race. But people in the 100, when you take a trail nap, they're realizing you're probably not supposed to be doing that. So I guess that's a common occurrence in the 200 miler where you would see somebody on the side of the trail taking a nap, and it's like, okay, you're not dead, you're sleeping.
And so, some of them even have a sign. I didn't, the veterans who have done 200s before, they even had a sign, and there were two of them sleeping. And you're like, cause I was like, I saw people and you're like, hey, you're good, you know? And they had a sign, just resting. They put a little sign.
That's like tractor trailers on the side of the road.
Yeah,
put the
little cones
out and everything. So
yes.
you need to take some cones with you when you take your trail out.
Yeah, just a cone, a flare for at night. Yeah.
Your sleep cones.
I find that fascinating. I find all that fascinating. I like sleep though, so maybe that's why I like this idea.
Yeah, sleep station, man. Do a 200 and you can get some sleep during the race.
I think I just want to volunteer at the sleep station.
You're not allowed to sleep as the volunteer.
You got a captain that. Sorry about that tangent.
So one of the questions I have, and you mentioned it before, is managing the time in between. These races are essentially a month apart.
Yeah.
And so is it really, part of we were talking about before, is it actually trying to rebuild? Is it just trying to minimize recovery? Like, what's your strategy in between these things?
Well, talking with Cliff, because I did that 100-mile, a month after the 200-mile. And so it looks like what we're going to do, there'll be some running, but it's not going to be trying to build back up, no speed work. It's going to be just all strictly recovery. I'm run streaking too. So I'll probably do my little 2 miles a day and limp through it or whatever for the first little bit. And then, but it's going to be all about recovery. I've got some of those boots, the compression, the compression boots. I'll be doing some of that, a lot of rolling, a lot of, stretching and just being real proactive. I'll probably go get a massage. It's going to be rough, but I'll go get a massage, and just doing whatever I can early on to maximize that healing, eat healthy. As much as I'm going to want to, try to give my body the nutrients it needs, just to get myself rebuilt as much as possible for the next one. And so that being said, I probably won't run them as hard as I would if I were just doing one, because, doing Bigfoot I got to concentrate on Bigfoot. I got to keep that in mind. I got to keep the next aid station in mind, but I also have to keep in mind that it's the first of 650 something miles of racing that's going to happen in 3 months. So, minimizing damage and not taking too many chances, but still getting out there and getting it done, that's why I'm amazed that like Michael McKnight, who went and won all 3 of them and did it. He's a cyborg,
He really is.
I don't know how he did that. It's amazing. It is amazing. I don't have any, I'll never say never, but, I don't plan on doing the same thing,
So do you mind me asking, what does pacing look like for any of these? Like, how do you, for instance, let me back up for a second. So the LOVit 100, you finished that, I think it was 22?
22:29.
22:29, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a pretty fast pace for 100. It's a sub 24 hour. I think you did the Tahoe, you said was like
73 and a half.
Okay, 73 hours. So obviously there's a big jump between the two, but what is pace? How do you determine your pace for a 200 miler? I know you have the 4 days or 5 days, depending on which race it is, but how do you determine like how far do you want to get so that you've earned your rest? Like, you mentioned.
Well, and when I first did it, I didn't really, I didn't go in with that mindset. And so, there's a lot more running on the first day than the second day and third day. But really, just listening to my body and jogging slow, running, but a good comfortable pace, and stopping to walk, stopping to power hike on the inclines. For the Tahoe 200, I remember Jamil Khoury, Jam. We kind of ran together a little bit, and I remember him talking to somebody, and he was doing some power hiking for a while, and I was too. This was even on the first day, and I remember him telling somebody like, "Hey, you can actually power hike this whole thing, and get it done, in the allotted time." But, you got to factor in the aid station times, if you're going to spend a half an hour at one that you're not even sleeping at, to get fuel in and change or do what you got to do. That takes up time too. And so, pacing is just really a lot on feel, but not stressing about the time, just keep moving forward. If it's slow, yeah, it's slow. Run when you feel it. Get a good jog in. Don't sprint, and just keep moving. That relentless forward progress. And that was one of the things I kept telling myself during Tahoe. Just keep moving forward. keep moving forward.
So do you train for power hiking then? Because obviously walking and running are two different locomotions of your body, and they impact your hips and everything a little bit differently. So do you train walking?
I did some, but for Tahoe, and I didn't do enough. I'll probably do some more. I trained with the trekking poles because I carried trekking poles the whole time. Even when I was running, I just held them. I got some weightlifting gloves, some Weider weightlifting gloves, and I wore them the whole time. My hands were kind of blackish, from wearing those things. But I trained with the trekking poles to get used to them because, I mean, you guys know, you're using your shoulders, you're pushing, you're driving, and to learn to use them efficiently because they're a big help, especially when you're on technical terrain and you're tired and, it's extra support. And so I did some training with that out at Turkey Mountain here in Tulsa, up and down, but I'll probably be doing a lot more of that kind of training. Now that I've experienced it more and know what I'm getting into, I'll be doing a lot more longer, slower runs for the Triple Crown. Yeah.
So I'm still trying to wrap my head around being on my feet for that long. It's just, it's impressive, man. So impressive.
Can I ask him the question I really want to ask?
I know. I was like, do I ask it?
I want to ask it. So
I'm scared, man. I'm scared.
No, don't be scared. I'm a big fan of this idea. I actually like what you said that, when you're in this, the Bigfoot, you're looking from this aid station to the next aid station. It's not just about getting to the next aid station. It's the fact that you've got to take into account Lake Tahoe and also Moab. Like, you've got all three of these you wanted to kind of consider. So let's just hear this out. I know we don't like these negative scenarios, right? But let's say you're in Bigfoot 200 and you're in like 100 something miles in, like these, I don't even know how to ask that question, right? You're in 100 miles in and you DNF. Okay. Do you do the next race?
Yeah, 100%.
So it's no longer about the Triple Crown. You would do the next race.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It's definitely, I would still do it, still get the experience. And, I'm kind of mad at you for asking it. No, it's a good question. No, it's a good question because I'll be thinking about it. And one of the things I'll have to rely upon, like my wife and my crew, is because I know my body to an extent, but I also know that I'm hard-headed and to make sure that they know, don't let me maim myself, because I have these other races or do something that's going to severely injure me or make me to where I can't run again or put me in mortal peril, because, when it comes down to it, it's just a race and it's just running. I want to achieve my goals. I'll work hard to do them, but it's not worth losing my life or losing my ability to be able to function as a human. So, and so I'll have to rely upon them. And my wife has pulled the plug on races for me before, when I was kind of borderline, and she's like, you're done. So
I think it's a healthy perspective too. I mean, the Triple Crown is an incredible feat, but each of these individual races, they also are. I mean, they're mammoth, they're huge undertakings, right? I don't think it takes anything away from the other two races if you DNF one of them. I think it takes away from the Triple Crown, sure, but I think it's a demonstration of your faith and the fact that you believe that this is your potential and you want to kind of express that in the next race and everything. So I'm not surprised that you would continue on, but I figured I should at least ask.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I shared the podcast with my crash and burn at Moab. I mean, it's real. It happens. It's part of the journey. And if all we do, kind of like, on Instagram, everything's perfect, everything's beautiful, but and I appreciate about you guys is you guys share your struggles too. When you put your run, like, hey, this was rough or this was good. I appreciate that because it's real. And I think people need to see that because people can look at, oh, he's done these many races and all, and he never has a tough time. And, it can happen, even after doing Tahoe 200, I've DNF'd 100, It happens. You got to respect the distance. You got to respect it, no matter what.
I think that's a good message for everybody that's listening. I mean, I still believe that a single mile is a really long distance and no one should overlook the fact that covering a mile is a long way to go.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And like I said, your message is also, you can do hard things, but it's really a matter of the daily disciplines. In fact, you even posted something today. I just pulled it up because I couldn't remember exactly what it said, but you posted today. It says what we do on some great occasion will depend on what we are, and what we are will be the result of previous years of self-discipline. Yeah. And so I've really seen that message come across with you. So I think it's cool, man. We were curious and we were talking about it. Like you said, I'm not surprised that you say, no, keep pressing. Like, it sucks to take one on the nose, but
it happens.
But it does happen. Now, that being said, and we'll transition in a second, but I'm really excited to watch this unfold for you. I've seen you post and the work that you're putting in. So I've got high hopes, man, for the way this goes this year.
So I do have one more question though, about the 200s. And you said it earlier. It's the advice you got from one of the other folks who had run 200s before. He said to take care of your feet. It's a huge point, and it's a huge point just about anybody who gets into ultras, and particularly those just getting started in it. Your feet tend to be the challenge that kind of wrecks a lot of people. I experienced a lot of feet issues when I first started. I'm dealing with plantar fasciitis now, so it's a different ball game. But that wasn't the point that they were telling you to take care of your feet for the 200s, because I'm assuming they mean during the race. So what are some things and strategies that you do to take care of those very vital pieces of equipment at the bottom of your legs that you're required to get you at the end?
Yeah, I'm pretty fortunate. I don't have a lot of issues with my feet as far as blistering and those. I wear toe socks. I've worn in Gingy before, and now I'm leaning. I wear exo toes more often now, and that helps, because before I was wearing those, your toes rub together and get a blister. Keep them separated. And I actually sing that when I'm putting my socks on sometimes. Keep them separated. But so that's terrible. I'm sorry.
No, I'm waiting on you to finish the song. No. Finish the song, because it'll make it somewhere.
I usually put I put some form of lube on them. Pick your lube, whatever, before the race, and during the race, I'm pretty fortunate. Now for the Tahoe 200, I did get some blistering on the inside of my heels, and I think partially because I was hiking, the hiking I was doing, that's what it was. And the shoes I was wearing, I did a lot of running in them. I did some, but I was doing a lot of hiking. There was a lot of steep climbs to go up, and that was causing it. And so luckily at the aid stations, they would tape it up, change my socks, and it wasn't an issue. And so, so that was the issue I had, but I was able to keep moving, was able to work with it. But normally, like even for LOVit, my feet were wet the whole time, and there were creek crossings. My notes were hilarious. The little card I have with notes, because it would say stuff like possible creek crossing, feet might get wet. My feet were wet the whole time because it rained before, and so so my wife was like, "You need to change your socks. You need to change." I said, "No, there's another creek right there." It's and my feet did okay. The socks wicked away most of the moisture, and I didn't have any blisters. So
but to that point, so the exotoes, that's something they have, that I think it's the copper technology, I think is what they say in their socks, and so they do wick away moisture, and so they're a great product as well. And I think there's other things like Swift Wick and things as well, and maybe and Dry Max, but you also lube your toes as well. So even though you don't have the blister issues, you do a lot of preventative things that help sustain that I think is important. It's not just pure luck. You have prepared your feet for that effort. And if they're wet for that long, for 20 some odd hours, you've got to have some lube and some sort of, toe separation on them, or else they're going to rub together and have a little bit of sloughing of the blisters. But
because as Offspring says, you got to keep them separated.
Hey,
there you go.
Hey, we are unabashed here, so it's good.
I thought it's interesting though. The only time I've ever had I won't even say major blister problems in a race was the Umstead 100, my first 100, and it was from the hiking. Yep. It was from the walking versus the running. And so I just think that's a good tip also for anybody listening. Even if you don't have blister problems normally when you're running, as you get into these longer distances, be prepared, because as you change some of that stuff,
it's a different foot strike.
It's a different foot strike, and it can develop. And especially for me, it was the hills. It was hiking the hills because now you're pulling against your shoe a little bit. But
I appreciate that, and it's helpful.
It's helpful. And then going into Moab, what I did in case I had the same issue, I made sure I had moleskin and some stuff to put on the inside. I didn't put it ahead of time, but if I were to start feeling it, if I'd raced long enough to feel it, I'd have put it in there. So
you'll have it this time.
Yes.
Like I said, we're excited for that. But I know, I don't want to cut too short on time, and I want to make sure we get to the podcast, man, because you do a lot of great work out there. Run the Riot. We really had a good time talking to you. I've gone and listened. Remind me when you started. I got a note October 2019. Is that right?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
So you've got 70 something episodes out there. I'm interested. What got you into? How did you start Run the Riot?
Well, so I don't know. I somebody asked me to be on their podcast. I think it's kind of like the same story you guys have, man.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. So it was just a fellow Ultra Red Team member, one of our Ultra ambassador friends, and he had me on the podcast, his podcast, and his was just strictly running. And I was like, man, it'd really be cool to, and I listened to a lot of podcasts, and there's always some questions that I want to ask. There's always something like, man, he should have asked this, or I'd like to know that. And so after seeing how this, how he laid it out and did it, I was like, man, I could do that. And I'm an IT guy, and so I started figuring that out. I had different names I was going to use from Philippians 4, Press On, and some other stuff. And I was like, how can I have a last name like The Riot and not call it the Run The Riot podcast, And so, so came up with it, got a really crappy logo to start, man. Mine was terrible. And just started calling up people and interviewing people I knew. And I was surprised at, I reached out to like Sally McRae, and I was, I don't know, a few episodes in, and she's like, sure. And got her on the podcast, and Mars Ulrich, called, reached out to him, and he's, sure, and so it was, I didn't know what I was doing, they probably like, it's just doofus, if you listen to the early ones, it's even worse than it is now. And so it was fun. I've been having a blast with it. And I had one of our guys from church, he does branding, and one day he said something about, how's your podcast going? He sees my posts online and stuff, and I was like, yeah, good, man. I gotta do something about the logo. He said, yeah, I was gonna tell you need some help. He said, and he does that, and he said, man, I'll help you. And I was like, man, he said, no. He said, and so he helped me with the logo and everything. And so I was like, what a blessing. And so I got a cool logo now,
That's awesome.
But anyway, it's just been fun. I've gotten to meet some really cool people that I wouldn't have met otherwise, that maybe I kind of interact with them a little bit on social media, but then kind of like us talking, it's like, now we know each other, I love that, we've had a conversation, and then now when we're conversing, it's next level, and so I love people, and we got a great running community. And so this has just been a blast. Sometimes it's work, sometimes it's tough, but I enjoy it. I love it.
Yeah. It's one of the things that, and we've only been doing it, I guess we have like, I don't know, November. God, yeah, just recently. 4 months, 3 months. Not a lot of time, but one of the things that I have found interesting is, like you said, it is surprising who's willing to be on one, right, with you.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're willing, it just demonstrates, I think, like how open everybody is in the community, and how, they just want to like talk and get together about something that we all love. And it's one of the things I find really cool about what we're doing and being a part of it. And obviously you've been doing it for a lot longer, and you've got some really cool guests that you've had a part of. I've had a chance to talk to. Any experiences or anything that like takeaways, something that you heard from one of your guests that stood out to you that you thought, I'm going to put that in practice, or something like that?
It's been quite a few, and and not just the big names, but like one of the first ones that, and this is from Sally McRae. I'm just going to, one of them, and I still do this sometimes. I did it during the LOVit 100. One of the things she does is, she was trying to figure out people she coaches how to get their posture. One thing to tell them during a race to get their posture. And she says, heart up, get your heart up. And I kind of saw something about it before. So I asked her about it, and she talked about it. And dude, sometimes when I'm down in a race or I'm getting down, I think heart up, and it just, and so Sally, you're probably not listening to this, but thank you. So it's something,
Whoa. He's probably not listening.
Wait, I was thinking I was on mine. Sorry. This is your podcast. My bad. Yeah, she's not listening to mine. She'll listen to yours. I'm sorry.
She's one of the 4 that we have listening.
Okay. I didn't mean that. I was thinking I was on my own podcast. Never mind.
But I love that. And I mean, I really think that's a great idea and great point. Heart Up is a really good visual, I think, that is helpful.
So believe it or not, so I went back and because I'm a Sally McRae fan, ever since she did the Bill Yang video, or he did the video about her.
That was awesome.
And so I went and listened to your episode with Sally McRae, and dude, I loved the way she talked about that, both from a mental, the emotional heart up, but then literally the physical. This is how you change your posture. This is how you. So
that's good.
I can absolutely see why that would be a big takeaway. So anybody that's listening, I highly recommend that episode. And that was a while ago, right? That was pretty early on.
That was real early on. That was like maybe first 10 episodes or something like that. Yeah.
So one of the other things that we talked about on yours that's really important to us is adding value to our audience. And I will say in listening and even the way you talked with us, I really appreciate, man, the way that you dig for those nuggets. You're clearly about doing the same thing for your audience, adding value, not just talking and having a good time, right?
Yeah.
But hopefully bettering them when they walk away, with that experience. So I really appreciate that about your show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And I just, not because I'm on here, but you guys are doing a great job. That's why, we connected. I love what you guys are doing, and it shows that you guys are being intentional about it. And so we got a great community, man. And we can learn from each other. There's so much good information, good motivation to mine out there. So yeah, the more people we got doing it, the better. So you guys aren't competition, you're friends.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah, and we talked about that a little bit with yours, but I honestly think the more that we can help each other out, the more that we can help, new runners get into this crazy thing that we love to do. It's just such a win for everybody.
Yes.
Because the more runners, that means the more events, and everybody likes more events.
Yes. Yes. Our spouses, maybe not so much all the time, but yes.
That's true. He's right. But
yes.
Probably time that we start wrapping it up. But I really want to thank you for your time. Thank you for having us as well. Like you said, it really has developed into a friendship, and we're looking forward to following you. And so that being said, we'll make sure that we post in the notes. Yeah. You're very active on social media. We talked about Run the Riot, and the website. Is it The Riot Run?
Yes.
Okay, The Riot.run. I had it up, and I wanted to make sure I know that that's where some of the podcast stuff is.
There's a few that go to that, but that you can get to it. You can do Run The Riot.run or The Riot.run. Yeah.
But we'll put all that in the comments and stuff below.
Absolutely. Okay. But for the Ultra Running Guys family, again, as we always say, we are so grateful for you for giving us the support. Make sure that if you haven't already, subscribe, follow us, on the podcast, so that, like I said, you're with us for the long haul, and go do the same thing with Dave. Run the Riot. There's so much value to be gleaned there. So, Dave, thank you again, man, for your time. We had so much fun.
Appreciate it, guys. My pleasure, man.
All right. We will talk soon, and cut.
I like the cone idea.
Yeah.
I think that is funny.
Dude, that would be awesome.
I fly, and we are in the Dave Theriot meeting, right?
Nope. Charlie's.
All right.
I'm excited.
Feeling good? You got your energy up?
Woohoo!
You're not allowed to DNF the third of the Triple Crown. Dude, that's just dumb. You're the reason I owe so much in taxes. And you're not doing anything.
I pay taxes too, bro.
Great. Yeah. You did it. You had an incredible run. I don't want to get into it.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll talk about it.
It's an incredible run.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
We are definitely matching though.
Yeah, we are.
It bothers me.
We could pretend we're wearing the same shirt.
God have mercy. Man, it is late.
I still got to run home.
Not running home this time.
Oh, you're not running home? Okay.
No, I'm barely even walking because of my foot.
Yeah. No, I was trying to find the notes I sent you, and I can't find them. So
we got them.
I had my wife interview me one time. Okay. It was freaking hilarious.
We should have our wives interview.
We should.
Yeah, you should. It was fun.
They're like, I don't want to do this.
And they're like, are we done yet?
You're frozen. Do you know that song from Frozen?
You're frozen.
No.
You're frozen.